Hello,
This
hello.
meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, it is. It is April 26, 2023. It's a SIG Node CI weekly meeting. Welcome, everybody. We have 2 items on agenda, and then we will go to triage. We didn't have triage for a long time, so it will be interesting. First item, Mike.
Yeah, so I noticed this per submit was failing a couple of weeks ago. After some investigation, I believe I found the root cause. It seems to be an issue with how the SSH keys are propagated. And if you go almost to the end, I explained the full solution in a couple of comments before. Now, this might be a little bit out of scope for this meeting, but the potential solution is to upgrade all the dependencies in no problem detector. I was wondering if we have any policies for these. Do we want to upgrade as soon as possible? Use the latest versions? What's the best next steps here? To just upgrade everything?
Typically, we upgrade as needed. So if it's needed, we do upgrade.
Okay.
But so you're saying that there are some algorithm mismatch?
Right. So this is an issue I saw in another totally different scenario, where a particular version of the Xcrypto SSH library, when using an RSA key, it defaults to SHA-1 as the signing algorithm. That algorithm is deprecated because it has collisions, and it's already been proven. So the recommendation is if you're using RSA, you need to use a newer algorithm. And I checked the version. I think it's mentioned there. Version v6, v0.6.0 uses the other algorithm for default instead of SHA-1. As long as we upgrade the crypto version, we should be good. Another solution, if we don't want to do this upgrade, I mean, potentially we probably want to do the upgrade anyway. But if we don't want to do the upgrade, is changing the type of keys we use to something like elliptic curve.
One thing I would question, I didn't read like too deep into that, but if you'll upgrade the library, will we have a problem with older versions of OS? Like, will we need to run the same test on older versions? And if so, will this be version mismatch again? So it's worth checking.
Right. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. The way this works is, I think this is only for the test logic, because how we SSH to the basically. For contrast, in other jobs we execute directly the commands via os.execute, so we don't really use a Go SSH library, and in that way we rely on the OS where we're deploying the tests to use the correct SSH keys and algorithms. When we're using a library, Go, in this case the Go library, we're using whatever the library implements, and in this case it's using an older algorithm. So at the end, I don't think this is going to be an issue, particularly because 1, it's only focusing on tests. 2, it's only targeting creating new nodes and running stuff on those nodes via SSH. So I think the upgrade is safe. I would be worried about breaking other things by upgrading every other component. That's I think that's why my main suggestion was just to upgrade the crypto SSH library instead of everything else as well.
Okay. Yeah, let's discuss it in a bug. But I would caution against making sure that we can run tests on any OS.
Right.
Better.
And I think Varsha was working on this. Again, this is a bit out of scope for the project, but Varsha was working on some similar upgrade all components.
It seems to be closed.
Yeah, we closed that one. You probably don't want to open the diff here. It's going to crash your browser. But yeah, I think this update was like particularly for upgrading the Golang version. We could reopen the original PR, or I can create a new one. Both options work.
Okay. Yeah. Next agenda item is Dixie. Dixie, do you want to present? So to give some context, we work with Dixie to understand how, like, we discovered some gaps in test coverage, like we didn't test previous versions of previous releases with critical tests. So we decided to just put some more structure into that, and Dixie prepared some presentation on how we can structure the tests. So I will stop presenting then, Dixie.
Sure.
You get to take over?
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is to have a guidance around what tests we want to cover in the SIG Node test grid. So if you see in the containerd tab, there are a lot of tests that don't make sense to be here. For example, the in-place pod resize. Probably we could have those in SIG Node kubelet so that there is a clarity around what variable we are testing. So I'll go ahead and present the talk. So this is still an incomplete doc, first of all. And the variables that we want to test against are CRI. What CRI do we want to run the test against? What C group version we want to run the test against? Which OS and which release branch? So I would like to propose that we have a naming convention where we specify, say, CRI first, and then the C group and OS, then the test type and the release branch. There could be exceptions around not specifying these values if those values are set as default for a particular tab. And if the release branch is master, we could just skip adding the release branch. Now, the different test tabs that SIG Node CI should care about is the first one here is SIG Node release blocking. This should have all the tests with no weird variables. Like the default value for CRI could be containerd, default value for C group could be C group v2, and we could test against both OSs, like have the configuration against both OSs in one single job so that it creates two instances as in per instance per OS. And then we test against all the release branches from n-3 to master. And the different test types that this tab could have is node conformance test, serial tests, skipping the flaky and alpha and beta tests, and the node features test. Apart from these three, I see that there are two other tabs that were approved on GitHub. So we can continue to have node conformance test with CRI cryo and C group V1 and C group V2. These are the only two exceptions that do not comply with the default values in the SIG Node release blocking tab. And the test names as per the naming convention could have like if the CRI is default, like here, we should have this node conformance test running only against containerd and C group v2 and both OSs and against all the release branches. So the name could be like node conformance release and the branch name. Likewise, for node feature, since this will also run against all default values, the name could be like node feature release and the release branch name. Likewise for serial test as well. And exceptions being these. So since these are exceptions on the default values, so the names could be like cryo, C group V1, node conformance master. These tests are already there, the exceptional ones, but there is missing coverage around n-3 release branch and some of the missing coverage around serial release branches. And whenever there is a new version of Kate's released, probably we could have someone who owns the release responsibility, who ensures that there is a new image against which all the tests run for every new Kate's version that's released. And the tests run against the new N branch and the new N-3 branch. So that could be the person who's responsible for updating the test tabs. That person can take care of this. And this is a mistake. This is SIG Node kubelet, the kubelet tab. So this could have variability around kubelet, and this could cover the tests that have features that require specific configuration, like features like swap, eviction, device plugin, huge pages. These features require special node setup. And then features like kubelet credential provider, this requires special K8s configuration. So whatever features require special configuration that could go in kubelet, and all the alpha and beta features could also be here. And then we could also have tests like node conformance with alpha features enabled, with beta features enabled, with alpha disabled and beta disabled, all different combinations, so that there is enough coverage. And the default values, like these could test against container D only, C group V2 only, and COS, and only against master branch. And the release responsibility would be to update the versions queue test. Like whenever there is a new branch, the versions queue support changes, like for which whatever the new release is about. And then in container D, we could have tests like node features that run against container D main and all combinations of K8s and container D versions supported by GKE. So this is specific. This is, I'm suggesting that we have this specific for GKE to begin with, like whatever container D versions are supported by whatever GKE versions, we could have those tests to begin with. And then once other providers want to add new tests, they could go ahead, and we are very much flexible around the guidance here.
Yeah, so I think the key point about GKE is not that GKE is somehow special, is because we want to create some matrix of compatibility between Kubernetes and Containerd. That's why we want to make sure that we have some matrix that we recommend to people to use, and it's easier to go with whatever matrix we have in cloud providers.
Yeah,
It's
and
probably aligned with across our cloud providers, by the way, so I'm pretty sure.
yeah, so based on the test that we are running here, we could provide metrics that say these are the combinations that are mostly tested, and that's the only metric that we want to provide. And we can also have node conformance tests running against different combination of kits and container D versions as supported by GK, and likewise serial tests. And apart from these three, any tests that are specific to container D versions and container D build related tests could also go in here, and help us um, that would help us clean this tab here, which has a lot of different tests, and a lot of tests don't make sense to be placed here.
Yeah, you stopped projection, by the way.
Uh, I don't know why that happened. Just go ahead. Yeah, so this tab in here is very cluttered. Like it has a lot of tests that are not testing anything specific to container D. So we could just move those tests as per the guidance in kubelet. So that's the general idea around having this doc. And like I said, this is an incomplete doc, and I still have to create a public version of this so that I can share with other people. And I'm also open to suggestions as to if there are any that you think could be added to this as a guidance. Yep, that is all.
Yeah. I think we also discussed that maybe first tab can be called something other than release blocking, because release blocking and release informing is something that release team is tracking, and we want to help them do that. But at the same time, like I think what this tab is creating is like test with all defaults, like, and basically test like conformance of features. Then test everything that needs special configuration. It's kubelet special configuration, and then test compatibility with container runtimes. And we have two tabs for that: Containerd and CRI, and we have different test matrix how to test compatibility, but not necessarily every feature needs to be tested against every Containerd version. So we need to make sure that every tab is responsible for variability of specific component.
I have a question about the C group driver. Is that another dimension? It seems like there's a few tests that test like specific drivers, a C group of S versus system D, but it doesn't seem like there's really any overarching. We'll test everything with C group of S, and then we'll also test everything with system D.
I think we want to make sure that V2, cgroup V2 coverage is overwhelming, because pretty soon all operating system will switch to cgroup V2 as a default. And systemd already talking about like deprecating V1 very soon. So I think they're talking about December this year. So we will get to the situation when we'll ask people to forcefully migrate to V2. That's why we want to make sure that coverage is enough and defaults are. I think it's time to start defaulting to V2 and testing V1 as a additional variability.
And I might just be uninformed, but is the cgroup driver independent of the cgroup version though? Like cgroup FS versus the systemd managed cgroups?
I think it's just different names.
I think cgroup v2 doc talks mostly about system D driver, but I'm not sure. But yeah, if we want to add specific tests to a particular driver, I think if at all it's required, I think again we could continue adding those to kubelet. Um, yeah, I think maybe in kubelet tab, since it's a special configuration. But yeah, I can think more about it and add in the doc if it's needed.
Yeah, I need to go read more about it as well.
Yeah, I think I'll just read more about it, depending on what driver is compatible with what version, and then add it to the doc if it's needed.
Right?
Yeah, quick question on, sorry, at the top of this document, it was mentioned, or a little bit down, it was mentioned that the cryo, conformance tests for cgroup V1 and V2 were special cases. Is there a recommendation on how we can get them to be not special in this scenario? I guess I'm a little confused on what's special about them.
So I think Sergey would know, but I'm also not aware of why these tests were added. To me, it makes sense to have these tests in the cryo tab itself, but I saw a PR that requested adding these tests as release blocking. So maybe, Sergey, do you know why these were added?
Yeah, I think we conflating a little bit here that between, like, as I mentioned, release blocking tab is called release blocking, and I think this document is trying to switch from it being release blocking to it being like, let's test default configurations. Let's say it's feature of kubelet rather than like runtimes. And then runtime variability needs to go, and compatibility with different runtimes needs to go into like specific runtime groups. So maybe if you can rename it into SIG Node default features or something like that, then release blocking can be made not through special dashboard, like special tab in our dashboard, but through adding them into release team, release blocking, and release informing tests.
Okay.
So I think this dimension is different. So in that here is not like, I think, I think maybe if we can rename this tab a little bit and not make it release blocking, then it may be easier to understand. And also, we wanted to highlight that even though it's release blocking, we don't test with previous releases. So I think it may be better, if you, Dixie, can you scroll to containerd tab? So in containerd tab, we want to test like specific versions, like previous versions of Kubernetes, previous versions of containerd, based on some test matrix that we can all agree on. I think the same will be with cryo, and those also needs to be release blocking. So we either create our own release blocking, a part of defaults, or we can just use release team, release block, and then release informing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I understand. And that's partially the reason why we want to even like refactor all these dashboards, because it's super unclear where to add your feature. Like, let's say you have swap feature, not swap, and like it's once it's GA, is it release blocking or it's non-release blocking? I mean, it may be release blocking, but it's still non-default configuration. So we don't want, like, we probably want it in separate tab where we configure it specially. And then maybe you want to test it compatibility with different runtimes. But maybe compatibility with different runtimes will be a subset of tests. So we want to make sure that there is a guidance where to put your specific tests.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So as a clarification, the scheme, so what is formerly the SIG node release blocking is now going to be something like a default configuration thing. So will that only have like one containerd test with COS and cgroup v2? Is that kind of the plan with that, or will there be a more expansive matrix underneath that tab?
That was the plan. So the plan was that we want to test features of kubelet rather than specific configuration of runtimes. And this will be the first tab. So like this is a kind of recommended way to run Kubernetes, and we test that all the features run successfully on the default configuration, let's say. And then if you want specially configure your environment, then you go to second tab to validate. And then if you want to use different runtimes and test compatibility with runtimes, then you go to the next tab.
So I understand the stated purpose of having it be agnostic of runtime, but it kind of implies to me that having multiple runtimes within that tab, just even the two different tests of both cryo and containerd with cgroup v2 and their default OS, that kind of, to me, better tests the kubelet-like features, because then we're testing the kubelet independent of the actual runtime itself, where we have the normalizing function of having both runtimes to kind of keep each other passing. Do you think that would be appropriate in this scheme? And then we have those two, one for cryo, one containerd. We can have the same cgroup version, and then in the other tabs we can go in more depth about like cgroup version and operating system. You know, in the case where containerd has both Ubuntu and COS. Do you think that would be amenable in this proposal?
So instead of testing compatibility with runtimes on runtime tab, have it on default tab?
Well, not even, yeah, I guess in a very like slim definition of the compatibility. So instead of like, you know, instead of having the full matrix of all of the different ways that each individual runtime want to be tested, just have one of each of like, you know, we define that this is the default test for each of these. You know, we can run, it looks like you have COS and Ubuntu for containerd on cgroup v2, and then we'd have like, you know, Fedora CoreOS on cgroup v2 with cryo. And so have those three kind of be the default release blocking tests. And then,
yeah, I think it's reasonable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would prefer to have at least one cryo in this default scheme, you know, so that we have the wider visibility of like the naming of the default, and also just like kind of we can declare our sort of default configuration to a community as well, and then from there we can go into more depth.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable. What I don't want is all metric, like all variations. Like if you add one variability, it's great. If you start adding more and more dimensions to that, it will be quite complicated.
Yeah, just one is perfectly fine for me. Just, you know, just having cryo somewhere on that board would be my ideal.
Yeah, same with me.
So are you guys saying that having cryo in this tab?
Yeah, having one cryo test, and we can keep C group v2, and the OS can be Fedora Core OS, and same release branches as the containerd. So having one of those for there.
So maybe we could change the OS here from Ubuntu to Fedora and have cryo.
We can keep Ubuntu because Ubuntu is quite popular. So just add a Fedora as a third one.
Okay. Okay.
And on this topic, the plan was to use built-in containerd. Whatever is built into Ubuntu, of course, we can use that. On Fedora, I don't know if it's built in, but we need to define like what will be the default.
Yeah, for Fedora, we would need to install based on the version of the release branch. We don't have. I mean, we do have cryo available, but we install it. So but we can make that declaration of what the default would be for each release branch, based on that. So I think that this scheme works for me.
Okay.
That's all then.
Brian, do you have any comments from the SIG testing?
So, Peter, would we remove the additional tests here for node conformance for on this?
Yeah, from this tab, we'd probably move them to the cryo tab themselves because we'd still want those. But yeah, for this release blocking or node default, whatever we end up calling it, we would basically just have whatever analogous test to containerd, but swap in cryo and Fedora.
Okay.
Brian, do you have any comments from SIG testing perspective? Okay, maybe he stepped aside. Okay, so Dixie, if you can prepare this as a public document, it would be great. We can then share it more broadly.
Sure.
And start implementing.
As a quick note, this is a great initiative. As someone who has worked on these tabs, it was always very confusing. So I'm looking forward to having a more clear mapping between tab and test and like matrix of configuration. So this is great.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I suggest we go to triage. Okay, I pre-opened all this box and I did some cleanup of this tab today, this dashboard. One initiative that Ike is running is switching tests into ARM64. Pretty soon we'll run everything on ARM64, so we'll have some test coverage. Is anybody interested to take a look?
Should we consider upgrading this to the document that Dikshita just mentioned?
So ARM64, I think it will be variability on kubelet side.
Is there any change besides, I think, from what I understand, we only need to change the base OS image, right? And potentially the build.
So this is adding definition of tests.
Okay.
And it's already adding the kubelet side. Yeah, so just running all the standard tests on ARM. And this is a init file. I'll self-assign then.
You can assign me in this one. I think even if we could prove it as is, and if we needed to, Miranda 96, yeah. If we want to move with Dixit as design, we can onboard to it as well.
Okay. And then not pod termination state test. Okay, it's a pod termination related. And it's very reasonable, like 200 lines. Anybody interested to take a look at this test case?
Yeah, I can review one.
Is it Todd?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it doesn't compile. Yeah, it's only created yesterday, so I hope that that will be fixed. So I will put it in review for now. Oh, interesting. Another pod exit set of tests. So do you want to take this one as well?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Much. Okay. Disruption target condition when preempting for critical pods. I wonder if it has tests. Yeah, I think it's more test code that needs to be reviewed first. So I will archive it out of our dashboard. Okay, stress test for gRPC, HTTP, and TCP probes. I think we had this test as a unit test before, but we can't run them normally. Okay, it's heavily commented already. If you want to join the party, please comment on that. Otherwise, I see a lot of reviewers already, so I can just move it to need approver. Use way to avoid blocking six-term handler. So just an optimization. Yeah. Sounds easy. Why is it assigned to me? Okay. Anybody want to take a look?
You
Yes.
can tag me.
Okay, Peter, come first. Peter, come first.
Peter?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Thank you. Set up E2E node to support. And this is KK side of ARM enablement. Mike, do you want to take a look at this as well?
Yeah, they look related. Yeah, I can take a look at this. So
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't move it to proper tab. Okay, E2A test for node lock query.
I'll take a look at this one. R. Phillips.
Okay. Node lock query, was it merged for 127? Or it was approved for 127? Okay, I will take a look later.
I'm pretty sure it was merged, but it's alpha. That's what I remember.
Okay. Yeah, this one I moved to triage because it was stuck in waiting on author, mostly to double check with the team what's happening.
Yeah, I'm currently working on this one. There are a few changes that we have to make, but it should be reviewed, ready for review soonish. In general, the core changes were approved previously, and we are currently working on end-to-end test changes. So if people want to take a look, I think, you can start taking a look. I can push, the latest changes that I've made so far, and that should be a good enough reflection of what I've been working on. But yeah, this is important, and we kind of want to get this merged, this release for sure.
Okay. Anybody besides Francesca wants to take a look? Okay. Is it related?
These are the end-to-end test improvement, which are basically making room to the real fix, because the real fix is quite simple, but exercising it is, as what you mentioned, something. So we are fixing also the end-to-end test in the process and making them, we believe, better. So yes, this is the dependency. There are the first commits from Swatis PR taken in isolation. They are self-contained. Thanks, Ryan, for the review earlier. And they should be going first, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I look. Yeah, I remember now. So I look at it. It looks good. It's just failing some tests. Okay.
Yep.
Let me take a look again, and once test passed. I mean, I understand it's unrelated, but it still need to pass.
No. You're right in the sense. I mean, it still let's have good coverage then. But I was just happy to realize that my changes actually passed. They ran and passed in the lanes.
Okay. Bumble nodes ready demo. And this one is the same. I want to double check the status of this. Ryan, you have this PR, and I think last what happened is I asked why it's needed. I wasn't sure what it fixes.
Let me go double check this one again. We may not need this. Let me see.
Yeah, I'll post it in the chat. Okay. And this is the same. I think last one was. Oh yeah, Peter, we discussed that tests were failing and needed to be taken a look at.
Yeah, this one has just been, at the bottom of my list, and that I don't love. because we should still be running these on systemd, but there was a problem. Like for a while, there was a problem with the test setup itself, and now there's one test that's failing, and I haven't had the cycles to allocate to figure out why. So is it, where is it in triage right now? It should be waiting on author for sure.
Yeah, I just moved it into triage for now to double check what's happening. Do you want me to
still
remove
should
it,
be the case.
stale?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry about this one. Thanks
No,
for
it's a
taking the
double
time to look at it. Yeah. I would love to one day allocate the time to get this.
Okay.
I believe this has actually been an open tab in my browser for like a year at this point.
I hope you will find time for more than just this. Okay, we 13 minutes before the end of the meeting, we can try to look at bugs. As I said, I cleaned up all other PRs in this dashboard, so it should be fine. On bug side, we have quite a few. I'm not sure how many we can go through this 13 minutes. Maybe we can go through a couple of them and then see how it goes. There is a pending pod and not ready. So pending pod was tainted. Yeah, I don't know if it's SIG Node related at all. I'll remove SIG Node. Okay. Init container will be removed by container GC when exited container exceeds the maximum dead containers. I didn't know we have the setting. Does anybody know about the setting? What does it do?
Yeah, I've never seen it. Is this for like when you view the logs of a previously exited container? I don't think I can think of.
Maximum number of old instances to be retained per container. Or you're saying it's for logs?
Oh, that was my guess. Like if a container exits.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct for logs, and also for like checking the exit code of the old container.
Mm-hmm.
Just diagnostics of why it exited and stuff. I would expect Oh, I see. So this is maximum dead containers, not maximum dead container per container. So it looks like it's about the number of dead containers per pod. This is an interesting feature request. It doesn't seem like, it sounds like to me that the entity that's doing this cleanup, I think the Kubernetes GC, is not being particularly smart about it and just going in chronological order. I'm not sure. Special handling of the init container. I don't know. I'm unsure about this feature request.
Yeah,
So-
sorry. I just want to mention that by the reading of it, by limited understanding, this seems like a change of behavior rather than a bug. Okay, I get ISTO is behaving wrongly, but from project perspective, it seems like more like a feature. Done.
I agree with you.
So I was basing the comment, the maximum dead containers flag looks like it's deprecated, and they just want you to use disk space.
I think the flag is deprecated, but the kubelets, I don't know if it's the field that's deprecated into kubelet config. So even if it's in the flag, I think that the field is still going to be there. It just won't be specified by flag, right? Oh
No, it
no,
says
I'm
use
wrong.
different flags.
Use eviction hard. Oh yeah, I'm wrong about that.
What is this? Let's put her first. Yeah, I still don't understand why init container is more important.
It sounds like they're saying that the init container is being restarted after it's being GC'd, which I don't know if I necessarily would expect.
Okay, I may be off target, but is not the semantic of init container, isn't something that, okay, you start, it runs, it ends at that point, who cares anymore? This behavior that this user is complaining about looks more like, okay, this all makes sense if you take it out sidecar container, not init container. But maybe this is something we can evaluate when discussing this issue.
Or it being restarted because we don't know the state of it, because it was removed.
Yeah, it seems so.
Oh, so it's a bug of init containers itself.
So I think the semantic of if a pod gets stopped and or deleted and recreated, init containers always run again.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. It kind of sounds like the pod is being restarted and all of the containers are being rerun, but Istio is not handling that well.
Right.
I would be surprised if the kubelet was restarting a dead init container. That's not expected to me. So if that's happening and the pod itself wasn't restarted, that's definitely a bug.
I think we could ask for a reproducer on this one.
Okay, with 3 minutes out the end, and I'm glad we resolved it. Triage needs information. I'm glad we resolved at least one. Yeah, I suggest we stop the meeting today, and thank you, everybody. Next week, we can review the rest of the bugs. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.